RPN, the Roddenberry Podcast Network.
This episode of Mission Log is sponsored by the official Star Trek Discovery Starships collection. All new starships in a larger size format and officially authorized by CBS Studios. Subscribe today and receive the USS Shenzhou for only $9.95 with free shipping. For details, visit eaglemoss.com/Discovery Starships.
This episode is also sponsored by Mack Weldon, quality essentials for men. Take 20% off your first order at mackweldon.com when you enter the promo code MissionLog at checkout.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 301. Paradise.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Ken Ray. Each week on Mission Log, we take apart an episode of Star Trek, examining it for morals, meanings, and messages, and asking ourselves if it stands the test of time.
This week, Paradise.
Yeah, this week, Paradise, because last week was almost Paradise.
Yes.
When we were looking on heaven's door.
Right, yeah.
80s song reference. Check. John's got trivia coming up in just a moment, but first,
a word from Eaglemoss, the official Star Trek Discovery Starships collection. No room for full-size starships in your collection? Well, let Eaglemoss help you out with a collection of smaller ships that will fit conveniently on your desk or shelves.
And they are fantastic ships. Officially authorized by CBS Studios, made from quality, solid materials, die-cast metal, and ABS materials, based on the CG models used in the production of Star Trek Discovery, which is what you should base your Discovery starships on.
I'm glad they went that direction.
Yeah,
that was really good.
I am too. I hear they were just thinking about closing their eyes and saying, I think it looked like this. Mm-hmm. But no, then they decided, we're going to take that extra step. We're going to base it on the actual things that they used to make the show.
Well, that's what you get to do when you have an expert like Ben Robinson on staff, making sure that all those details are covered. Now, we're talking about those details in big ships. The USS Shenzhou NCC 1227 is nearly 8 inches from front to back. Of course, it comes with that display base, and it comes with a collector's magazine featuring behind-the-scenes info, original design sketches, and a breakdown of the technology used on board.
Now, the first ship in the collection is the USS Shenzhou NCC 1227. It's available to subscribers for only $9.95 with free shipping at eaglemoss.com/Discovery Starships.
Additional models will come to you every month, including the Discovery, the Europa, the Vulcan Cruiser in the Solkar class, that new Klingon Bird of Prey, and so much more. New ships arrive monthly at the exclusive 20% discount off the standard retail price, also with free shipping.
Subscribers are also entitled to free gifts worth over $100, and you can cancel your subscription at any time. Full details can be found at eaglemoss.com/Discovery Starships. Now, if subscribing isn't your thing, if you'd rather pick and choose your individual ships, you can do that too. The place online to do that is shop.eaglemoss.com. You can also drop in on your local comic book shop. You'll be paying the regular price, both those places. That will run you about $55.
But again, to subscribe, eaglemoss.com/Discovery Starships. And a huge thanks to Eaglemoss for sponsoring this week's show.
You know, I swear you could see forever from the bridge of one of those ships, John.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just got that song in my head now, and I feel like everybody else should too. Hey, John's got trivia coming up in just a moment. No problem, man. I am here for you, for my enjoyment. John's got trivia coming up in just a moment, as I said, but I'm first going to let you know how to get in touch with us. Mission Log Pod is the address to find us on Facebook, Skype, and Twitter. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, we would love to hear your voice. 323-522-5641 is the phone number to call. 323-522-5641. Our email address is missionlog@roddenberry.com. Our show website, including discovered documents, is at missionlogpodcast.com. And please do remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode of Mission Log.
Or maybe if they just called and recorded like their best Mike Reno and Ann Wilson impression, that might make it into a future episode of Mission Log. You don't know.
Is that who did that song?
Yeah.
I don't even know, man. It was, you know what's hysterical, honestly?
What's that?
That song was featured all summer long in in The Guiding Light. It was when Philip and Beth were sort of getting together finally, because we all knew they were going to eventually, and then they did, and it was that song wall to wall. That's what I remember. Oh, yeah, I know. Oh, really bringing us all the way back to the very first episode of Mission Log. Mm-hmm. You know, when we brought the Zaz. Anyway,
it was a Loverboy and a Heart crossover we were waiting for.
Was it?
And
really?
Now you just crossed it over to Guiding Light. Yeah,
I really had no idea that was the case. I mean, I only knew that In Their Arms, Salvation. Will you please do trivia?
Trivia for this week's episode, Paradise. The story credits go to Jim Trombetta and James Crocker. We most recently talked about Jim's story contributions on The Alternate, and James's most recent for us was Melora, for which he got the teleplay credit. So the teleplay credit for this episode goes to Jeff King, Richard Manning, and Hans Baimler. Jeff King is a new name to us. He's got a lot of genre credits as a writer and producer. And in fact, he worked as a comic book writer too. He's had a hand in The Black Donnellys, Total Recall 2070, Stargate SG-1, and more. This is his only Trek credit. Now, incidentally, while they were filming this episode, Richard and Hans were asked to join the writing staff, but they both declined. Hans joined the staff during the next season, though, as a producer. Today's episode is directed by Corey Allen. Remember that we most recently covered his DS9 episode, The Circle, and of course he got his Trek start way back with the TNG pilot, Encounter at Farpoint. Hey, locations. A good amount of the location filming was done at Griffith Park, right in the middle of LA, serving here as an mostly uninhabited planet. And Ken, you know that I like my ship names, so let's talk about those. We have a mention here of the Crockett. Now, I know what you're thinking. It could be Sonny Crockett from Miami Vice, but we'll actually go with Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. That is, in fact, who that ship was named after. We also have the Santa Maria, of course, literally translate to Saint Mary. Built in 1460, that was the name of Christopher Columbus's largest of his 3 ships that he used to sail to the New World. Now, the registry number of that ship, we see it in a couple of places on set, is BDR 529. That, of course, well, if I'm pointing it out, it has to be an in-joke. Ken, you're never going to believe what that is a reference to.
I do not know what that is a reference to.
That is the license plate on the car from the Blues Brothers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because they're Blues Brothers fans. Why wouldn't you do that if you're a Blues Brothers fan?
Yeah, that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Guest stars. Julia Nixon plays Cassandra, and we have actually seen her before on the bridge of the Enterprise D. She plays Ensign Sue in The Arsenal of Freedom during that show's first season. She was married to David Soul, who, of course, was Hutch on Starsky and Hutch, but he was also one of the feeders of Vol in TOS on the Apple. Julia appeared in the miniseries Around the World in 80 Days. She had a recurring role on Babylon 5, and she also works as a voice actor. Joseph is played by Steve Vinovich. Steve got his start in the early 70s in small roles. You can even catch him in The Mechanic with Charles Bronson. A ton of the usual and unusual TV guest roles fill out his resume, but you'll also find Steve in feature roles in movies like The Santa Claus and even Mannequin with future Star Trek actor Kim Cattrall. And Gail Strickland plays Alexis. Shout out to my hometown of Birmingham, Alabama, where Gail grew up too. She has made a huge number of TV appearances going way back with Dark Shadows, then later with recurring roles on Melrose Place and Dr. Quinn, just to name a couple. She has a featured role in the Michael Douglas movie The American President. This is her only Star Trek appearance.
Alexis and Joseph want to take Ben and Miles through a wasteland they like to call their home. Welcome to paradise.
Prologue. Sisko and O'Brien are surveying star systems near the wormhole for potential colony spots. Also, the commander has a favor to ask of his underling. Please tutor my son Jake in what it would take to be a Starfleet engineer. Benjamin says Jake shows very little aptitude for it. O'Brien says neither did he. It wasn't until he was literally under enemy fire that he found his engineering chops. He'll be happy to help Jake. As for the planet survey, hey, this one will be great. Except it's apparently already got people on it. Human people. Human people who aren't answering their hail. Maybe because of that low-level duonetic field O'Brien's picking up. Also, there's no record of human people down there. The commander and the engineer decide to check it out. Almost immediately, they meet problems. Anything electronic is dead. Maybe because of that low-level duonetic field O'Brien's picked up. That means no tricorders, no phasers, and no way to get back to the runabout. Also, they found the people they were looking for, or really the people have found them. Hands up, don't move, they hear. Sisko and O'Brien comply as we head to opening credits. Act 1. Told to turn around, Sisko and O'Brien do so, meeting Vinod. He's the guy with the bow and arrow, barking orders, and Joseph, who's happy to see a couple of guys from Starfleet. Tensions ease and Joseph explains how they came to be here. They were on their way to another planet over 10 years ago when their ship developed life support trouble. They put down to make repairs and got ensnared in the duonetic field that stranded Sisko and O'Brien. With the runabout in orbit, Sisko says it won't take his people long to find them. Then they can all leave. But Joseph says this is their home now. Oh, phasers and tricorders may not work, but the people do. He sends Vinod ahead to tell his mother that they have guests. Vinod's mother, Alexis, seems very pleased to have the newcomers around, as do the other inhabitants. They all have questions, and Ben and Miles will be happy to answer them. Miles is in a hurry to figure out what's going on with all their electronics. Alexis says they gave up on that forever ago. It's probably all the astatine deposits on the planet. Anyway, they've done well for themselves without modern technology. They plow the lands, grow food, weave clothes, build walls for protection. One of the inhabitants, Cassandra, asks if they'll all leave when people come to rescue Ben and Miles. Alexis says that's something they all have to decide for themselves, though she'll never leave, and she'll never want what they have here to change. It means too much to her. But she's happy to share what they have with the newcomers, as long as they're there. Alexis does have to let them know, though, as long as they are there, they'll have to pitch in. They'll be surprised how much better their food tastes when they have to work for it. As Joseph shows Ben and Miles to their bunks, Alexis tells her son Vinod that 2 more healthy men could mean a lot to their community. Act 2. On DS9, Kira and Dax are talking over the unexpected arrival of Admiral Mitsuya. He's not there yet, but he's on his way. He says he wants to talk over Cardassian foreign policy, though Dax says what he really wants is to get Ben Sisko at the poker table. They better call Ben and get him back, but... well, that's odd. No response from the Rio Grande, the runabout Sisko and O'Brien were using. Back in the Lost Community, Sisko's been reading some of the writings of Alexis. She's left her books in both of their quarters. While Miles hasn't read them, Sisko says she seems to have an opinion about everything, all with a common theme: that people have grown fat and lazy and dull. The common conceit that the human species has evolved over the last several centuries is ludicrous, she writes. What gains we have made have come at the cost of our own core identities. Man has lost touch with his true power. Miles says it sounds like it took a crash landing for her to find her paradise. As for how his work's going, he's basically got nothing to work with. Oh, ideas, sure, but the community seems to have thrown away all of the old tech it had. Joseph joins the conversation with a big, "Yep." Alexis thought that having old stuff around would serve as a constant reminder of what they could no longer have, so away it went. That was tough for Joseph. He had been their ship's engineer, but he realized Alexis was right. She was teaching them a new philosophy, which they needed to survive. And it's been great. They've got a renewed sense of community that man lost centuries ago. Now, if you'll excuse the engineer, he has to try to heal an ailing member of the community with moss and herbs. It's Meg. Looks like she'll be the fourth victim of an insect that's killed, well, 3 other members of the community. Sisko and O'Brien want to redouble their efforts to get back to the runabout. They could use its med kit to heal Meg. But Alexis says it would be a waste of time. Miles has some real ideas about how to make it happen, which is when Alexis asks to speak to Ben privately. Basically, she wants him to knock it off with all the technology talk, and talk of the rescue party he's expecting, and lose the uniform. It gets hot in the fields. Act 3. DS9 has gotten a weird bit of news. A Romulan ship has spotted the runabout Rio Grande, traveling at warp 2 with no one on board. Kira and Dax will fly an intercept course to check it out. Back at the community, Ben's working in the fields, in his uniform, along with Miles. It's there that they see one of the community members pulled from a crate that's been baking in the sun. It's punishment for having stolen a candle. He's weak, he's thirsty, and Ben is not impressed. Alexis says at least he'll never steal again, and neither will anyone else who's seen how he came out. Quietly, Sisko orders O'Brien to seriously get to work finding a way off this planet. That night, Cassandra comes to Ben's quarters. She hits on him. Hard. And Ben realizes she's been sent there by Alexis. So he goes to confront her. He says he finds Alexis contemptible for using Cassandra that way. Also, he's starting to put a few things together, like the fact that she brought printed books of her own ideas while everyone else had info on pads. Her son Vinod was never allowed to eat replicated food, something Sisko heard from the young man while he was working the fields. Weird that with that disdain for technology, you just happen to crash on a planet where technology doesn't work. Yeah, right, says Alexis. I've actually been writing about how maybe there's some kind of divine providence that makes things like that happen. Ben sees her setting herself up as a messiah. Though there's no more time to talk about that, Alexis has decided that Ben will be standing watch tonight. Act 4. Sisko is stumbling tired from standing watch all night after a day in the fields. He and Miles talk briefly about his work on the Duonetic Field mystery. Bottom line, it's still a mystery, though he's not buying the Astatine deposit explanation. Alexis has some good news. Meg appears to be getting better. The right combination of herbs and spices or something. Oh, Ben, will you be able to pull your usual shift in the field today? Miles starts to protest, but it's really not a question. Ben says he'll do it. Alexis is glad to hear that, though she thinks he'd probably be more comfortable in clothes besides his uniform. In space, Dax and Kira are trying to catch the Rio Grande. It's risky, but they do it. Now they'll be able to investigate what happened to the Rio Grande on the Rio Grande. Back in the community, bad news from Alexis. Meg is dead. Meg was so proud of the community and what it had done, which makes the other bad news she has even worse. Miles spent time he should have been spending working for the community, trying to figure out a way off the planet. Joseph says Miles was probably just trying to get the medical supplies that could have saved Meg. And that proves what Alexis has feared, that Ben and Miles are a harmful influence on the community. Look what's become of Joseph, defending ways he knows to be wrong. But here's the thing. Ben is Miles' commanding officer. She holds the commander responsible and orders him into the crate in the field. Act 5. Dax and Kira have found something missing from the Rio Grande. its records. They've been erased. But it looks like somebody tried to destroy it by flying it into a star. That didn't quite work, though, and now Dax thinks she can tell which star it was, the one around which the community's planet orbits. So they'll head that way. Back in the community, Ben's out of the box, tired, thirsty, hobbling. Alexis says she would love to let him rest, give him food and water, but she can't do that. Not until he gives in. Instead, he goes in, back into the crate of his own volition. He will not break. Miles has had enough. He thinks he knows a way he can track down whatever's generating the duonetic field. He asks Joseph to help him. No? Well, then he asks Joseph to look the other way while he leaves. No? Well, then he asks Joseph to look down at the ground while Miles knocks Joseph out by hitting him on the head. Don't worry, Joseph knew it was coming, and he'll be fine. In the woods, Miles is following a weird sort of duonetic field generating detector he's built from rocks and water and a gourd. And he's found it. A buried bit of technology that is working, apparently to keep the rest of the tech from not working. What the gourd doesn't detect is Vinod, chasing Miles with his bow and arrow. A bit of skill, though, and a bit of luck as well, and Miles is able to trick, then overpower Vinod. Bringing the young man bound back to the compound, Miles uses his phaser to free Sisko from the crate. Yeah, that duonetic field, it was created by a machine, hidden and maintained by Alexis. She says Ben can stop calling for the Rio Grande. It's no longer in orbit. Then she, confesses isn't quite the right word. She admits proudly that she sabotaged their ship near this planet. They were always on their way here. Uninhabited, out of the way, the perfect spot for their ideal community. Cassandra accuses Alexis of lying. Well, duh, but look at the truths it uncovered. Cassandra would have been a clerk her whole life, Joseph a repairman, and that guy who stole the candle, he'd probably be in prison by now. By stranding them all here, Alexis showed them, proved to them who and what they could be. What of the dead? Asks Sisko. He says she'll have to account for what she's done, and Alexis says she's ready to go with them. Right in time for Kira to call. Sisko says he's all right and to prepare for multiple beam-ups. But Joseph, apparently speaking for all of them now, says they're not going anywhere. It's not the home that they had been looking for, but it's home. Whatever Alexis may be guilty of, she did give us our community. He's not sure whether they'll leave the duonetic field on or establish contact with others, but they'll be staying. It's time for those of us who don't belong here to leave, Ben, says Alexis. And with that, Ben, Miles, Alexis, and Vinod beam away. Behind them, members of the community head back to their quarters, though a couple of kids linger, staring at the crate. The end.
You know, it's great that they're out there, Sisko and O'Brien. They're looking for more places to establish colonies. Mm-hmm. And maybe I thought they could get in touch with their old friends, the Skreans, see how they're doing. Maybe. They might need a new planet.
Yeah,
you know?
Or they could just check their notes from when they were looking for suitable planets for the Skreans. Because I thought about them, too. It's like, yeah, we're out here looking for planets because I threw away the list I made for the Skreans, right. Apparently, and hopefully this will mean I will never forget. Oh, I lied to Miles. I told him it was better if we come out here because, that's the best way to lead is to lie.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, I thought this might be a thing that Starfleet looks into. If you detect a thing that disables electronics, maybe you should send a probe before beaming down there to check it out with your electronics.
Well, they didn't know that it disabled electronics before they went down. All they knew is they weren't receiving a response to their hail.
But they said it could. It could be this duonetic field thing that's messing with our communications.
Right.
I'm just going to say, if there's a chance that you can't communicate the closer you get to the thing, back off from the thing.
You know what's really interesting to me, actually? Okay, so what do we know about the people down there? The only thing we know is that they're human, but how do we know they're human, not just humanoid? And then they decide to beam down there. How do they know they're not violating the Prime Directive at that point?
Sure.
I mean, except they apparently do know it's human, but they're not reading any technology. But it's kind of weird because there's actually a whole ship down there. You'd think they would have been able to say, maybe they could have just included that part. Like, well, we're not getting anything, but there is a spaceship on the planet, so I think we're okay to go.
Might have something to do with something. We don't know. Hey, do you prefer tricorder or tricorder?
Yeah, I prefer well, now I can't even think of how to say it properly. Yes, the way Joseph said it was wrong.
Yeah, I thought for a moment that the actor might have been English or just, from some country other than the U.S. Yeah. And I thought that just might be a bit of accent slipping through. But no, he's from Illinois. So
just a weird read, but the rest of the scene went so well. They're like, yeah, well.
Yeah, just keep it. Yeah. Hey, fat, lazy, and dull. And then Miles says something along the lines of, my wife said that about me last week. Hi-oh! oh, does the fun ever start?
I know.
Yeah.
Keiko O'Brien, ladies and gentlemen, Keiko O'Brien.
And you mentioned the line about how Vinod says his mother would never let me eat replicated food. I wonder if that's an attitude shared by others in the 24th century. I mean, we kind of take for granted that replicators are everywhere, but has it really been a political statement that you're not going to eat replicated food, you're not going to let your kids eat replicated food? Just every now and then somebody will make an offhand comment like, oh, I like the non-replicated kind, or I'm Riker, I'm going to make terrible eggs, just in the traditional way of making terrible eggs instead of asking the replicator to do it right.
Or apparently, Sisko's father, may he rest in peace or cook.
I just somehow I feel like he's going to be fine.
Okay, fine. because apparently he was, Sisko knows how to work the fields because his father used to send him out to get real vegetables so he could make real food.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's, did you ever watch it was a mini series that James Franco called 11/22/63 about the guy who could go back in time and he was there to hopefully prevent the Kennedy assassination?
I have not watched it yet.
Okay. Fascinating little mini series, but one of the things, the door to another time is basically like outside a diner. And the James Franco character goes there, and this is where he learns about this secret. I'm not giving anything away. This is just the setup of the show. But the guy in the diner tells him, like, look, you're going to spend all this time in the early 60s waiting for the Kennedy assassination to roll around. And the first thing you'll notice is that the food is great. And I thought that was such a nice little detail. It's just like, if you live in your life, but everywhere you go, because it's 1960, 61, 62, and into 63, and it's just the food is fantastic. And actually, the diner owner has been going back in time and bringing meat back with him to serve at his diner. That's how he keeps the quality high and the price is low.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out why you were talking about that so much, and then I realized, oh, it's food.
Yeah, and there's not much food to talk about in here except that they grow some vegetables. I'm not interested.
Yeah, what do you think? What do you think Miles did with the innards of that hollowed out gourd, though? Well, it was probably already dry, wasn't it?
Yeah. At that point, it probably was. Yeah. A fun little line there. I'm a science officer. It's my job to have a better idea. Sounds like if Spock had been having a particularly sassy day. That's a great line for us.
Sassy.
Yeah, sassy Spock.
Sassy Spock. I like it. Hey, I have a question for you, and it's sort of along the lines of like the writer thing and stuff like that. Is there any point to the imitation peril faced by Dax and Kira as they try to stop the other runabout?
Oh, right.
I mean, is there? Because basically, and we've seen this now a few times on Deep Space Nine, where it's like, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this. It's like, well, but you are.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much. Right. It felt like filler. Yeah.
I think the only way to make that dramatically relevant is if, they lose the shuttle. Mm-hmm. That'd be one way to do it. But the only real mechanical reason I could see for that in the show is simply to allow for some passage of time on the planet. That was really it.
Yeah.
But yes, to your point, it's just filler as far as the Kira and Dax plotline here. It seems like there was something else you could do to allow some time to pass on the planet. Yeah. Otherwise, things are structured pretty well, but that was such a non-dramatic drama.
It is. And I don't know if it's just like a chance to, well, it is a space show. Maybe we should give them like a little bit more in terms of spaceship or something like that. Because, I mean, that is another thing. I mean, it does give you, that's the most action that you get in this episode is, you know, oh, we're going to be able to save this thing. Well, yeah.
Yeah, you can. And what you got from our point of view in the show is that little, like, the shuttle wobbles a little bit.
Right.
You know, when they show the exterior shot, the shuttle catches up to the other shuttle, and then it kind of wobbles a little bit. Oh, okay. Well, we're good now. Speaking of writers, though, I thought there was some really good writing between Miles and Joseph. It was the writing and it was the acting, too. You just really felt like they had a bond from the beginning, them talking about engineering and all this, and just some common understanding. It was good stuff generally between them.
It was good stuff, although I did have one problem with one of the conversations they had.
Yeah.
You can't hit somebody on the head hard enough to knock them out and yet make it that they won't feel it. I'm pretty sure. Now, I will grant you,
sure?
I haven't tried it, but here's the thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Even if you can hit somebody on the head hard enough to knock them out where they won't feel it, they're going to feel it when they wake up. And I think, you know, that could be at least as bad.
With both John and Ken talking about this show, it is like they have got 2 tickets to paradise.
We'll dive deeper into paradise in a moment, but first, we want to talk about our underwear. Specifically, our Mack Weldon underwear.
Yeah, it's weird, but we do. Hey, John, ask me what I did yesterday.
What did you do yesterday, Ken?
I went to Disneyland, John. Now, ask me what I wore.
Oh, what did you wear?
Well, I wore my red jeans, my black shirt, my Mickey Mouse Vans, and a pair of Mack Weldon boxer briefs. The silver boxer briefs, to be precise. Really comfortable. I will say my less expensive underwear tends to get uncomfortable after a day of walking around. But the Mack Weldon boxer briefs, they have what they call stay put legs, which basically means they won't inch up on you, which is awesome. And also, you know, kind of a problem when you're like, hey, I'm getting on a roller coaster. Hey, I'm getting on a swing, you know.
Yeah.
Now, I will say I chose the silver, not because I'm fancy, but because the XT2 silver underwear and shirts are naturally antimicrobial, which means they eliminate odor, which is awesome. Thin, cool, and I don't mind saying I like the way they make me look. And I don't want to say much more than that.
Okay.
But I will say I like the way they make me look. Now, I know that you have also been shopping on the Mack Weldon site. How was that?
Well, look, the first word that comes to mind is easy. It's a clean, simple website that made my shopping very straightforward, which is exactly what I wanted out of the whole experience.
And you ended up with what?
Oh gosh. Okay. 2 pairs of underwear, one with the silver, like yours, 3 pairs of socks, also one with the silver, a t-shirt. And I have to tell you, the detail, the quality of the materials, everything is just apparent right from the moment I opened the bag that it shipped in. Really high quality. And I love the way it felt when I started to put it on.
I got to say, it's really weird to have underwear that you think about. and underwear, you know, with which you're actively happy. Anyway, that is kind of an odd thing for me. And for me, Mack Weldon is that underwear. Now, here's the thing. If it's not for you, that's okay. What'll happen is if you get it and if for some reason you're not completely satisfied, Mack Weldon will let you keep that first pair and they'll refund your money.
But they've got so much more than underwear. Mack Weldon aims to make the most comfortable underwear, socks, shirts, undershirts, hoodies, and sweatpants, and more that you will ever wear.
For 20% off your first order, visit MackWeldon.com and enter promo code MissionLog at checkout. That's MackWeldon, MackWeldon.com.
Hey, how about one more time? For 20% off your first order, visit macweldon.com and enter the promo code MissionLog at checkout. And a big thanks to Mac Weldon for sponsoring this week's show.
Hey, what do you think original series Kirk would have made of what Alexis did?
We're doing exactly what people ask us not to do, but
what? This
episode just screams, oh, don't compare the captains because they're all different. No.
No, here's the thing. We're not comparing the captains. We're comparing this sort of, well, I mean, we're looking at sort of this like pseudo quasi utopian whatever thing that's going on. And I can't help but wonder what Kirk would do because, I mean, look, the people here are producing, which to original series Kirk means they are absolutely living, right? I mean, he's got to look at these guys and see, oh, man, this is just absolutely fantastic. Except for the part where somebody, kidnapped them and lied to get them there. I guess what I'm wondering is, would he have left the other inhabitants behind? And also, or would he have tried to like talk them into coming back to civilization? Or would he have just said, we call it civilization and you'll like it a lot, and then beam them out of there? I mean, what happens if original series Kirk finds these people?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, it's a given that Alexis is going to space jail or wherever it is that people like that would go. That's just a given in both Kirk and the Sisko scenario. But I honestly think what we get is a kind of a sweaty, torn shirt Kirk, just doing an impassioned speech. You've been living a lie. This person lied to you. You may think this is great, but there's civilization out there that's so much greater, and we can help you and do this, and you'll be in touch with the Federation, and you'll have everything you need. Even if you want to stay here, we're going to come by and visit. I think it wouldn't be as simple as the ending here of just see ya. Oh, you wanted to stay? Oh, okay, cool. We won't bother you anymore.
See, because here's the thing. Kirk wouldn't need to make the speech about how much there is that civilization has to offer. They're from that, right? This is not like finding the feeders of Vol and saying, we got all this stuff you're going to love, once you figure out how to actually, move around in this world. I mean, they know how to do that.
Yeah, they've only been gone for 10 years.
I guess the other thing that I'm wondering is, do we not worry? I don't know what we're supposed to worry about in this episode. So I guess Alexis is going to be brought to justice, quote unquote, whatever that is. If they've decided, though, that everything they've got there is what's right for them, does this episode actually end with them coming after Sisko and O'Brien with pitchforks and torches, trying to get them to free their mother?
Yeah, well, but here's the thing. There are a lot of people still there in that colony who now realize that the whole thing is based on a lie. So even if they want to stay, which clearly they did, they may not be too thrilled about having Alexis back anyway, because she's the one who lied to them about the entire premise of them being there. And I also wonder this, would they turn the duonetic field back on? Because now it would be so much easier for other spacefaring groups to find them. Yeah, if they wanted to.
Because here's the other thing too. Well, no, they're easy to find apparently because Miles and Sisko did it.
But it'd be easy to be tampered with now that you've got the duonetic field turned off. People could beam in and beam out anytime they want. They could leave behind a piece of technology. It just opens them up to much more meddling than they would have had before.
See, the planet's a bit like Hotel California, though, isn't it? I mean, people can beam in anytime they want to, but they can never leave. Here's the thing, because what's his name? Joseph said, we're not sure whether or not we're going to turn the duonetic field back on. We don't know if we'll establish communications. A quick question from the back. How are we going to do that? Because we threw away all of our radios. We threw away all of the technology with the exception of the thing that generates the duonetic field, which we didn't even know it was there.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking in my head canon, they're like, so yeah, after you guys left, we all went and took a nap and we decided we really like naps. So we're thinking maybe coming back to what's what I'm looking for now would be an excellent idea.
Yeah. Look, I can't wait for about a year from now when the crew from DS9 checks back in on these colonists and finds out how it's going.
I feel certain that'll happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right after we check on how Kai Opaga's doing on that planet with all the people fighting.
Exactly. Look, I've said it before in some previous episode or multiple episodes of Mission Log that I'm really intrigued by stories about utopias because it seems like they're always good on paper, but rarely ever in practice, since you can't possibly account for the variables and the needs of every single person who will be a part of that society. I watched this one, and really the first story that popped into my head that is a utopian experiment, but is also very much about cult mentality, which is what this show is about in many ways, probably the biggest way. And that's the Jim Jones story in Guyana in the 70s at Jonestown. If people listening to this show don't know what I'm talking about, it's very easy to find many documentaries and articles about it online.
Yeah, there's a new book about it, actually, as we record this. Well, not new. It's been out for about a year, but it's just come out in paperback relatively recently, called Road to Jonestown, which is fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a story that just keeps getting explored and hashed over because there's so much there to try to figure out when you're somebody on the outside trying to understand what would lead 900 people to voluntarily off themselves because of their leader. But that story and this story about the molding and manipulation of people to focus on a specific ideology and then keeping that power structure in place through coercion and punishment and shaming and everything else that was going on that Alexis was using to shore up her power. So a lot of these similar stories and these story threads, they immediately use technology as sort of the starting place to lay blame, and then as a further way to bond people to a common cause. So I thought that was very clearly in this episode. There was a lot of attention to the reality of those details in real world situations where people have found themselves caught up in something like this. And the interesting part that you ask yourself in any of this is how much of it is free will, how much of it is manipulation and abuse that keeps people there, maybe under the mistaken impression that it is their free will to be there.
See, that was the part that bothered me about the fact that they all decided to stay, just like at the drop of a hat. First of all, we don't know that they all decided to stay. I mean, these are all people who have been under a despot's rule for the past 10 years, right? Mm-hmm. Even if she seems nice, even if she seems sweet, that's what she does. And so, I mean, we know that Cassandra seemed maybe interested in leaving. She was the one who raised the question first. Hey, when the rescuers come, are we all leaving? Right? Doesn't say that she wants to necessarily, but she's open to the possibility at least. And then the second Alexis is no longer in power, hey, filling that power vacuum is Joseph, who's like, no, we're not going anywhere. And again, I want somebody in the back to raise their hand and go, we're not. Can we explore that just a tiny bit? Just a little tiny bit, please.
Yeah. I watched a video not long ago that was smuggled out of North Korea. A Western photographer had shot a bunch of stuff there, and it was an interview. They blurred out the woman's face, and he was asking her if she ever wanted to leave. And there was so much hesitation, and she eventually landed on an answer that was something like, well, I've heard about the outside world. I've heard about these, but this is my home. I really just want to stay here. And even then you watch just wondering, like, okay, is that because even though your face is blurred out, there's a camera rolling and you don't know who's going to see this? Is this an answer that you are conditioned to say? Or is this truly where you've landed based on the limited information that you might have? I thought one of the other interesting aspects of this show, this episode, was the exploration of, I think it's kind of what we're getting at here, the true self. You know, there's this assumption by Alexis that she gave these people the gift of self-realization. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, there's a huge manipulative angle of psychology here, but you know, who's to say that any one of these people would not have accomplished great things in other circumstances? She tells, I forget the character's name now, who they took out of the punishment box.
Stephen.
Stephen, yeah, well, you could have been in jail, in your other life. Well,
for stealing one candle. For stealing one candle. And she's like, you'd probably be in prison by now. It's like, wow, it's one candle. You probably wouldn't need a candle if you'd left him in, I don't know, civilization.
Yeah. And you are being punished. You are in jail. You're in this version of jail here. And it does make you want to ask, okay, so what is it conditionally here in your society that would compel somebody to steal a candle?
Right.
You may have to start asking that question. But it is, just from a Star Trek perspective, the future that Star Trek posits is one where people are always going off to do things like living in agrarian societies or being miners or living in Scottish theme parks, literally whatever they want to do. But none of those people so far that we've seen has been forced there or told, you need to keep doing this and keep working hard because it will lead to self-actualization.
Well, that hasn't happened here either, because she lied to them. Cassandra says, you lied to us. You've been lying to us for 10 years. And Alexa says, yes, but perhaps a lie can lead to a more important truth. And, but it's all predicated on the lie. That's the problem. What you're talking about is none of these, what did you say? None of these people, nobody told them that this is what would lead to self-actualization. She didn't either. She said, we're going to die. We're going to die unless we all pull together. Right. And honestly, I mean, I know this comes up over and over again, but it goes back to the whole idea, the Watchmen thing, either the movie or the comic book. Humanity thought that there was something against which to fight. And so humanity pulled together and made itself better as a result. On this one, humanity, the small subset of humanity that's on this planet, they have to fight hunger. They have to fight disease. They have to fight the elements. And so they all come together and do it. But again, it's predicated on a lie.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. Yeah, they all pull together to fight the things that are challenges, which, sure, when you have one leader like Alexis and 30 people or so in this colony, a little easier to keep a grasp on. Multiply that exponentially. And we've got states full of people, countries full of people, a world full of people who face challenges that challenge the entire existence of humanity. But it's much more difficult to keep those people together and focused on those goals when, again, every person that you add into it, every bit of self-interest that you add into it changes that journey in one way or another. There is one, there are many lines in this episode to pick apart, but there's a particular line that I focused on. She says, Alexa says to Sisko, we've conquered 17 diseases with the most powerful tool man has, his ingenuity. And she's talking about using herbs and molds and fungi on their planet to help cure people. And I'm over here waving my hands and jumping up and down and shouting at the screen. Okay, you see, coming up with things like vaccines and technologies and communicators and starships, those are also examples of ingenuity. And it's an infuriating scene and designed to be that way, when poor Meg dies and we hear about other people who died, and somebody like Alexis decides well, let's pat ourselves on the back for our ingenuity of being able to go find herbs and fungi that will help cure these particular diseases. And it's so awful to think that they had medical packs, they had tricorders, they had advanced technology that would have wiped those things out in no time and voluntarily tossed them over their shoulder and let them get buried in the sand.
It is too bad that technology does not work for this community. Without it, they will never see paradise by the forward light.
Paradise. The episode is Paradise, Sean. I don't think we really need to explore the title that much.
I think we explored a lot of it in the intro to this episode.
That's true. Yes, we did. Yes. So we'll move on then and talk about the messages, morals, and meanings, and whether we feel this episode stands the test of time. Let's start with that one. Paradise, does the episode hold up as far as you're concerned?
I think it holds up very well, but with some caveats. It's a really fascinating look at this cult mentality. And it is just, at its core, a creepy story about manipulation and power. The most interesting kind of deep psychological stuff is about that question around self-actualization or happiness, quote unquote happiness. But we're pretty one-sided in this episode about who's right and who's wrong. I'm kind of appalled that they all stayed at the colony. Mm-hmm. Those people have been fed a lie. So there were other angles to follow here. So I feel like it holds up very well for what it is, but what it is not a deep exploration of those other ideas. It mainly just focuses on the cult-like structure that you have there. But overall, very entertaining, very well acted. Sisko gets some great moments. I mean, certainly him turning around and heading right back to the punishment box. These are all powerful moments for pretty much all of the actors in this show. So I can't really fault it for much, except for maybe that one scene you mentioned with Kira and Dax, where it's a sort of manufacturing a little space drama solely for the purpose of manufacturing some space drama. But yeah, I like this quite a lot. And I think there are a lot of angles to discuss here. So it holds up. How about you?
Well, I hate Alexis, excuse me. So that part worked out fine.
Yeah, that's intentional.
Yeah. We see her as bad, though there almost seems to be like but what are you going to do at the end of it? Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, they want to know about soccer and fashion and new ships and things like that when Miles and Ben first arrived. But by the end of it, this is who they are now, even if they never should have been these people, save for the machinations of someone who was, setting herself up to be an evil Kai. I mean, because she was on her way to God, right?
Yeah.
That one scene is fascinating where she's like, where Sisko's like, yeah, it's weird, right? That you just happen to end up on a planet with no technology, which has always been your thing. And she's like, yeah, I've been wondering if there's something divine about that. And he's like, oh, and like God would have his hand on your shoulder. Mm-hmm. She's on her way to setting herself up as a messianic figure.
Yeah.
And in the end, everybody's like, yeah, well, I know she turned out not to be, but yeah, it's who I am now. And so what am I going to do? Change? No, I'm fine. But I mean, I'm honestly surprised that we got this far into the episode and you didn't mention Stockholm Syndrome. Except they're not even in love anymore with the person who held them hostage. They're just in love with being held hostage, apparently. And I'm not saying there's no value in going out in the country and, plowing the fields and working the earth and doing all those things, right? I mean, my dad used to fix computers when computers were the size of a room. The most joy he ever got out of life was when he was making like rocking horses for kids or like hand carving chessboards or things like that. There's value in labor. There's value in doing the kinds of things that they're doing there, but you should be able to decide. And where I have a problem with this episode, it's not as easy for me to just be like, yeah, well, I hate what happened at the end. But I mean, the message is obvious. Well, no, I'm not sure the message, if there is a message. Go back to what you were talking about earlier about North Korea. So let's say all of a sudden you introduce true democracy to North Korea and the streets are flooded with, like money and spare time and all the things that people would need. Do they continue to lead this abused life because the abused life is what they've always known? And then what would we do, like, to maybe help those people? Or would we say, no, it's worked for them so far, even though it hasn't really worked for them? It's just the only thing that they had that actually worked. I mean, do you see what I mean? I'm like, I hate Alexis, but in the end, I don't think this show actually takes a stand on whether or not what she did was wrong. What she really has to pay for is the bodies that are on her, and then maybe also for kidnapping or trying to keep Miles and Ben, away from what they were trying to do. As far as the people are concerned, though, they're just now going to continue to live the life that she forced them into. And that, it's one of those clever sort of ambiguous ends that really annoys me. Like, let me ask you a question. What do you make of at the very end, the two kids staring at the punishment box after Starfleet has beamed up? What's that shot about?
Right. Well, that's kind of the chilling, ambiguous end here, because either they're looking at it because, in the positive sense, we're saying, hey, look, these people have the opportunity now to actually live this better life that they think that they can live, and correct the mistakes that somebody like Alexis enforced by having things like the box, or it's this much darker interpretation that here are these kids now who will just continue because this is the life that they know. Those kids are about as old as those colonists have been on that planet.
Right.
So this is the entire life that they know, which is that, you do the thing, you work the land, and if you steal a candle, you end up in the box. And you continue to torture and manipulate each other to hold things together.
You don't even have to steal anything to end up in the box. Remember, all Ben wanted to do was leave.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah,
all Sisko wanted to do was leave. Right. And because he had ideas that were not conducive to what was going on with the community, he had to go into the box. And I know nobody is saying it's fine that he went into the box. The problem that I have is people who have had the punishment of the box are keeping themselves in that box because of it, even afterwards. Right. I mean, there's almost like a Harry Mudd twist at the end. How Harry Mudd was delivering part of the lesson, and you and I, when we watched it, like, how does that get to happen? All of a sudden, this guy who's basically been, a human trafficker with drugs on the side is now delivering the "you see, Timmy" moment. And it's kind of the same thing too. When Alexis says to Ben, it's time for those of us who don't belong here to go now. Mm-hmm. She's including herself in the group that doesn't belong there, but the ones who belong there are the people that she tortured into thinking that they belong there.
I know. Right.
And they stay.
Yeah. And this is why it's very difficult to have this conversation about self-actualization, because, it's a completely unfair situation to put these poor people in. You take a guy like Joseph and wow, Joseph, you did so many great things. You've accomplished so much here. And you would have just been, fixing reactor cores if you had stayed where you were. Well, he might have really found his calling doing that, in the way that O'Brien found his calling doing what he does.
Right.
That's why I particularly like the writing with them together, because O'Brien is a guy who is, by all accounts, I mean, we make fun of the relationship they've written for him and Keiko, but by all accounts, he loves what he does. He's passionate about it. And he is self-actualized in some way, given what we've got out of the character as the viewers here. So I love that they parallel Joseph to him, but how, again, just unconscionable and evil for somebody like Alexis to be that presumptuous and say, look, I gave you this gift. You would have been doing something else terrible. Well, no. We don't know that. You certainly don't know that. That's only something that Joseph can decide. So good on him if he wants to keep farming, but I feel like there's still a whole other world out there for him to re-explore and relearn in the 10 years that he's been gone.
Yeah, and we might want somebody from, Starfleet's psych corps to, land and say, anybody need a hug? Anybody want to talk? Yeah. Anybody want to, maybe unpack some of what's happened over the past 11 or 12 years? Because it's been a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway, it has been a lot. But let me really quickly, messages, sir. Are there, why do we keep asking the messages question, dude? Are there messages to this episode?
Well, Ken, it's like the old saying goes, home is where the punishment box is.
Yeah, right.
No, but look, honestly, there's the one line that is so chilling here. Perhaps a lie can lead to a more important truth. I'm just going to give that a hard no. I dropped that here in the messages part because it is the anti-message. That is such a terrible thing for somebody to justify the abuse that they've been given and the conditions that they've been forced into. It's awful. It's awful.
Yeah, except, of course, it ends up being true for Joseph.
Yeah, and it makes it no less awful. So, yeah.
Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Executive producer Rod Roddenberry. Hey, if you want to check out some really cool podcasts in addition to this one, may I suggest podcast.roddenberry.com. That is the home of the Roddenberry Podcast Network, which is the home to Mission Log Live, Women at Warp, Priority One, and The Trek Files. Podcast.roddenberry.com. If you'd like to help support Mission Log directly, that'd be swell. Patreon.com/missionlog is the place to do that. For more exciting Star Trek podcasts, check out Trek FM, that is Trek.fm, and for the latest in Star Trek news and discussion, be sure to visit TrekMovie.com.
Next week, Shadowplay.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com, and from the album Messages by Key Theory, free to download at kitheory.com. We've been spending most our lives living in an Amish paradise. We churned butter once or twice, living in an Amish paradise. Hard work and sacrifice, living in an Amish paradise. We sell quilts at discount price, living in an Amish paradise. End transmission.
Podcast.roddenberry.com, the Roddenberry Podcast Network.